Aren't we supposed to be filming right now?
I mean, I guess.
You guess.
I guess.
Okay, but you over here doodling.
Yeah, I am.
Anywho, you know who it is. It's Zeus Cruz of Olympian Multimedia giving you another segment of Get Things Done. In this particular segment, we turn over here. We're at one of the workstations here in Ala Studio, and we're going to be breaking down to you guys just a couple things to keep in mind when you're creating like a scene within your audio production. What do I mean by that? Well, not usually, but sometimes if you're trying to make your production a little bit more orchestrated, you're trying to create something from an audio standpoint to give more of a visual to the listener to kind of set up your production, whether it's you're going to be concentrating on doing a lot of vocals, like what we're going to show today. We're doing like sort of like a spoken word type of project, or even if you were just doing music and you're going to align it with some type of vocals. Sometimes it's nice just to create like this audio scene, to create the visuals, allow the listener to paint something in their head to kind of really bring home the point of what you're trying to do within your production. So let's check it out. So there's this particular track that we're working on. It's called Hate and Love. We kind of shorten it up. It's a little bit longer of a title. But as we load it up, as you see, we got the production set up right here on this interface. As you guys know, Cakewalk is one of the main DAWs that we use. The couple points that I'm going to bring out, there's no specifics when it comes to what DAW or music editing software that you're using. These tips can be utilized in any program or software that you end up using, whatever is your preference. Let's just give you a quick sample of what we're working with here. This is the scene that we're creating to basically set the mood for the dialogue that I have within the production. So you notice we started off with the thunderstorm, something light. Now we have some footsteps, kind of simulate going through something like a muddy landscape, very sloppy. We got the thunder, as you notice, is in the background. So you pretty much got the gist of what we were doing there. Obviously, somebody's walking from outside, making their way indoors into a home. Everything, as you notice, was pretty much spaced out accordingly. When you're doing your production, you don't want to naturally start. As you can see, we started off with the rain, and then we lightly bring in the thunder to start simulating that in an audio sense that a storm is coming. Now this is the character. You're bringing that character into your scene. And if you notice, as you were listening to it, how much it's spaced out within the production, right? So on the high end, we have some peaks just to bring the elevation and a little bit more to the forefront when you have the thunderstorm, it's approaching, and then you have the footsteps, and then the trail that allows you to bring in the thunder part. And then that little sound that you hear here is pretty much, it's just a horror sound that I added on there. Sometimes it's just nice to add these little nuances in there. In this particular case, you can't put too much into your audio production. This is not a visual as we're doing like a short film or some type of visual where somebody can actually see as the person is going through the storm, that you can see that they're heavy in thought, or maybe simulate like they have their voices in their head, like they're going through some type of internal struggle with themselves. So sometimes you can add some kind of subtle nuance to kind of simulate that, since you don't have the visual. Again, what you're hoping for is that when they hear this, right, that they can actually capture it in their mind and see it as they're listening. If we move down into production, you notice to create a scene, you're going to be using multiple tracks. So for here, we're using about 7 different tracks just to go ahead and just create this type of scene in the beginning. So then if we go down further, right, you notice a storm. See how you notice we simulated like somebody's opening the door, they're coming inside, and then they slamming it. It doesn't make no sense. At some point, whatever sounds that you have in the background, you need to trail it off, right? Because obviously if you're going into a building setting, the storm and the sound is not going to be as vibrant as if you were outside, right? So you need to kind of simulate that into your production, or put that into your production where it gives that illusion, not illusion, but to simulate properly that are going. And then you notice you hear the keys. And then again, we offered a little bit more spacing, right? See, we offer that spacing just to give like a moment for that character, right? Maybe they're quickly in some kind of thought. Maybe once they turn around, they're kind of like, you know, a little spooked because someone else is in the room. You know, you don't know what kind of situation that they're in at that present moment. If we allowed to continue on with the audio, you'll start hearing the dialogue that I have with someone else that's on this production for this spoken word project. But it's all about having the spacing, and then also the loudness, how you normalize so that everything is with clarity, and one sound is not monopolizing the other, right? You're setting the mood. You're not coming right in with the thunderstorm like it's going to overpopulate your senses. And you see how subtly we're adding another thing into it. Now you're getting the scope of somebody walking through, dealing with the rain, dealing with the storm. Now we got the thunder. You see how it trails off. You see it in the background. We got some subtle other nuances going in the background. And if you notice the levels, it's always important to keep the levels so that you have a proper balance between the high and the low. Even with some of these sounds, I would definitely recommend, as you can see up here, to go ahead and pan and maybe have it where like you have one sound coming from one side and another sound coming from another. You know, just to create this full spectrum of sound and different things that you're putting into your production. And then what's important too here, if you notice, I have plugins, different compressors, different reverbs, different type of things that you can utilize that we talked about in the past video, that you can utilize to kind of amplify the sound a little bit more, to create it, to make your sound a little bit more realistic, right? So I always recommend to have your library, as you can see here, of different things that you can utilize. If you talk to other people, there is a right and wrong way to go through your process, right? Usually for something like this, we talked about it before. If you notice down here, you could create like a FX rack with all your standard plugins, your go-tos that you would utilize. For me, I like to play around with different type of plugins just to see what I can do to really capture that realism with the different type of sounds that I'm incorporating into the production. So I don't necessarily are going to use a FX rack or my go-to plugins to utilize this. As you notice, some of these plugins are more meant for vocals, and as you can see, there wasn't really no vocals. It was just a lot of ambient sounds to simulate, like in this case, a storm and someone walking through the storm. Also too, another trick that I recommend is muting. Mute a track so that you can kind of get an understanding of your levels between your tracks with the sounds. So check this out. Again, we're starting off, we have the storm. I muted track 2, which is where the steps come in. As we go about it, you're not going to hear the steps, you're just going to keep hearing the storm, right? What's the purpose of going ahead and muting this? Well, let the sound ride, let a few tracks ride with sound, as you see the thunder, and then unmute it. And sometimes this is a nice quick trick just for you to get an understanding if your levels are correct. And maybe you have to make some kind of quick configurations as far as maybe one sound is a little bit louder than the other. You know, put some EQ in there so that the levels can properly balance itself out. If I would have turned this on, track 2, and it would have came in like a storm, like it would have just came like very bombastic, very in your face, then clearly I would have to do something with that track and kind of balance that out, because you don't want your steps to override the storm, right? Or vice versa. Or even the part where the thunder comes in from the background. You don't want it to be like the steps sound so loud that you barely can even hear the thunder crackling in the background. So that's just a quick tip just to utilize. It's just to go ahead and just mute a track and then just see how the sounds in your other track go, and then unmute the one that you have muted and see how that balances out. Maybe you want to do it track by track as you continue to incorporate different types of sounds. You know, just make sure that everything is in its proper balance. Things can get hectic when you're adding more than one sound into your production, especially when you're doing a scene, right? And then we got something that's just a little bit more subtle. Check this out. So this is for another track that I'm working on. This is just in the preliminary stages. It's called Voices Activated. It's just the name of this particular track. So I'm starting off with a very subtle scene of just having some kind of voices. Again, the voices in your head, you know, and I'm creating like this spectrum of different voices, right? And creating this kind of dynamic. If you notice, again, subtlety is your friend. That beginning part, as quick as it is, it's just a few seconds long. It's supposed to simulate as the voices grow louder in my head. They become a little bit more amplified. Again, you don't want it to be blasting the listener right off the bat on exactly what you're trying to do. You want to create this scene. It's hard to do it sometimes because you're doing it in an audio way, but it's all about utilizing the audio to create the visual that you're hoping the listener can capture in their head as they're listening. And you see how it's kind of like there's still some spacing in between that. So it doesn't sound very compounded with the voices. And then when you come here, oops, you see how I trail it off because I'm introducing another sound. And you see how subtle that is, and it sounds very clean. And this is meant to be like more like a mimicking type of voice, where it's just constantly just echoing through my head. And you can see by the bandwidth, I didn't really add a whole lot to it. It's meant to be kind of like just pretty much breaking even as far as your high and lows. Keep everything mid, since it's more of a monotone type of a voice effect. So that's something to keep in mind as well if you're trying to introduce, is your proper timing of trailing something off so that you can blend it in with whatever new sound that you're trying to introduce. And that's it. I just wanted to give you some highlights, some enlightenment on how to go about doing your production when you're creating a audio scene, something to introduce your production. Sometimes this is really innovative and really cool if you can pull it off, because it definitely brings a sense of intrigue, and it brings like a really cool element to your audio production. So I definitely recommend it. And also too, last but not least, before I forget, of course you can make these sounds organically. You can probably go outside, utilize some type of audio recorder, even your phone yourself. Go ahead and manipulate that production the way you see fit to amplify it however you want to. But I also recommend right here, and again, I'm not sponsored by them in any way, shape, or form, but I definitely recommend Zapsplat. They have a huge library of different types of effects that you can utilize, different types of sounds, and they seem very organic, very authentic. And you can pretty much get anything. Car traffic, I don't know, big group conversations, a lot of nature, not just with like weather elements, but like with different types of animals. You'd be surprised. A lot of cool different type of like space type sounds, monster type sounds. So pretty much whatever you're looking for as far as like sound effects are concerned, I definitely recommend Zapsplat. So check them out. And that's it. I hope this was informative. I hope you enjoyed it. You know who it is. It's Zeus Cruz of Olympia Multimedia. And the only thing left to say is boop 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 is get things done. Check you later.